Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 243 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Renna, and the show notes are located on my site at continuefit.com. It's where you'll find all my other resources, including Strength Coach TV. All right, for the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner, spoke to Coach Boyle about his article on kids doing some distance training, which got some interesting comments about, and his experiences with sexual harassment in the gym and some things that he's changed over the years. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Alan Cosgrove is on to talk about how couples make it work as business partners. For the Functional Movement Systems segment, we have a new voice, Jenna Gourlay. She's on to start a two-part case study about a basketball player she worked with. I really enjoyed Jenna on here. We're going to get her on some more, too, with some other case studies. For the Train Heroic Data-Driven Coaching segment, Adam Doughty talks to Tim Robinson about strength coach bias. So basically, kind of going into thinking that getting stronger is always the answer. Good stuff, as always, from those two. For the MariGold Bars, hit the gym with the Strength Coach segment. Don't forget MariGold Bars, high-quality protein with all the premium ingredients. I have one every day. Check them out at MariGoldBars.com. Use the code StrengthCoach10 and you get $10 off your first order. All right, we got Molly Galbraith on. Molly's the founder of Girls Gone Strong, and she's on to talk about sexual harassment and really how it relates to our industry and the fitness industry. What does it look like? What does it sound like? And what we can do to prevent it in the gyms. Also talk to her about rape culture, something that I really had no idea about. That and so much more. Molly really articulates this message better than anyone else, so much to learn from this important interview. All right, lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days. Just $1. You have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day, almost every day, for 11 years. We just celebrated, the podcast just celebrated the 11-year anniversary, but it came about 2 months after StrengthCoach.com started. So, Coach, 11 years, man, I can't believe it.
11 years. Well, I just turned 59, and that doesn't seem like a lot of time. You know what I mean? I think that's like a small child. No, it is amazing. When I saw the 11 years, I laughed. I was like, wow, I can't believe it's been 11 years. But
I think it's appropriate that you're on the cell phone in the car too right now, because we haven't done that.
That's
in a year.
right. I know. We've been much more efficient with using Skype, but unfortunately my schedule today was a little bit tighter, so here we are on the phone.
That's all right. Well, we got to do one thing that we always did early on. You got to give us the weather report from Mike Potenza. He always looked forward to that, looking back in the Boston area.
Well, actually, no, you have to say, well, let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle, because I think that was...
I still say that.
Back in the old days, too.
No, I still say that.
So I didn't realize that. I should notice that when I listen, but I guess because I always hear it, but I think I'm not on the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike Potenza, in case you listen, at 57 and very sunny, but we have come out of a period that they don't have in California of 3 days straight of rain.
Yeah.
So.
Brutal. Cool, Coach. Let's get into it. I know, obviously, you're in the car. I put out a little meme that got some attention, and that's always the point of my memes, I guess. Let's be honest. And I just took a piece of what you had said. I said distance training you had said distance training disrupts the development of both speed and power. It makes you slow and gets you hurt. And you were in your article on this. You had talked about it. It was saying about a bunch of kids in a middle school. They had instituted cardiovascular days, and that they were using heart rate monitors, and they were running for 20 minutes at 160 beats per minute. But, you had said it was dumb for 3 reasons. The 220 minus age formula is an estimate. Distance training produces a 60% injury rate in females. And then number 2, which we'll probably talk about more, is that distance training is widely accepted as one of the worst ways to train. A lot of people got a little bit upset at this. I mean, one really good point made by Nathan Cragg was, look, 160 puts kids at MAF or lower. At this point, kids are getting to stay active while tracking heart rate. It's probably a much larger leap forward than those that grew up in the 90s and earlier can comprehend. I mean, he makes a good point there. I mean, what's wrong with 20 minutes? I don't know if I would consider that true distance running, but just to get the kids out there.
Well, I guess that, to me, you know me, I'm just anti-distance running. And the funny thing is, I clicked on the Twitter bios of the people who were unhappy. It's all distance runners. Mm-hmm. And they're people, I think they just don't like the fact that it's back to the Bud Light and ice cream thing. It's like, it's not about what you like. And it's amazing how people defend. Come on, there's got to be 1,000 better things you can do with kids than strap them to a heart rate monitor and say, okay, go run for 20 minutes. Because if you think, for the average kid, that's 2 miles, 2.5 miles. That's a long time. And it's just, I don't know. I just think from a physical education standpoint, what are you teaching? Oh, lifetime sport. And again, I'm just not a fan of running as a lifetime sport. I think it's just a way to create a lot more physical therapy patients. I just don't see the good in running and in distance running. And again, I always say the same thing. If people really take the time to read what I write, I'm not trying to talk runners out of running. I'm trying to talk people out of making non-runners or basically making non-runners into patients, because that's really what they do. When you take people, again, think, Alan Cosgrove, he talks about 1,500 foot strikes per mile. So, let's say the kid, let's go out and do 3,000 reps with an unfit kid. Mm-hmm. And then maybe, hey, we get a fit kid, who knows, 4,000 reps for a kid who's athletic. I know my son, who is athletic, who practices probably 4 to 5 times a week for an hour between hockey and lacrosse. I know he doesn't enjoy that. If I said, hey, let's go out and run 2 miles, that would not be high on his list of things to do. Yeah. And I know for a fact it would be really low on his list of things to do. Yeah. So to me, there's just a million negatives. One, you're turning people off to physical activity because you're saying, okay, let's go out and torture these kids. Particularly taking the kids if you're not an athlete and someone says, hey, strap this heart rate monitor on, get your heart rate up to 160 and go run 2 miles. Yeah. If someone said, okay, would you rather do that or stab a fork through your hand in the cafeteria? There's probably a bunch of kids who willingly stab themselves with a fork.
Oh, man.
I'm sure that'll produce a lot more positive responses.
Yeah.
But the people that are writing, that are talking about it on Twitter, do not listen to the podcast. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah. Well, Steve Magnus, who wrote Peak Performance, great book, and he's a big runner. And, I think from his lens was, and, I kind of wanted to respond, well, we don't all, there's not coaches out there like Steve Magnus that are talking about being able to run 10 or 11 miles with really good splits and keeping them fast, etc. But again, that's somebody who's running that kind of a distance, and your lens is looking at, the field and court athletes, right? And ice, obviously, but
exactly.
Totally.
And if you look, Steve's not a Mike Boyle fan by any stretch of the imagination. He will quite frequently allude to me as like he talks about the Mike Boyles of the world. Yeah. Who are the sort of anti-distance running. And again, I believe in the Charlie Francis idea. I believe that you can make people slower. I've been watching it for too many years, and they love to tell you that's not true, that doesn't happen. It's the squat people. If you do it right, it's the same rationale that we use in every situation, and it's the same rationale of, I really like this so much that I'm going to argue with you, instead of really thinking about it. And I guess that's my problem. Again, I didn't wake up someday and decide. I used to run all the time. I actually will tell you, I liked running. I liked my 4-mile run along the Charles River. I enjoyed it, getting out for 30 minutes. I absolutely liked doing that in the later stages of my life, like in my 30s and 40s. But, well, you know what I realized? My knees didn't hold up to running. I couldn't run anymore. It is not a lifetime activity. It is a way, it's a way to run the miles up, literally, on the car, on the joints. And for me, I decided I had to choose between running and working. I could not do both. If I ran today, if I went out and ran a mile, I probably would need knee surgery next week. Yet I can work every day without that repetitive pounding to my bone end. So it's just, to me, there's just, when we're looking at that scale and risk and benefit and all that stuff, it just never balances for me.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Coach, let's talk about, I got Molly Galbraith on today, and they have like a new course on sexual harassment. We talked about this on the forum as well. Molly's on. It was a great interview. And part of it is they think, people our age, I'm 51, and obviously you're just turned 59. And I think, growing up when we did, it was definitely a different mentality about certain things you could say. And I wanted to ask you about, because Molly they have a bunch of suggestions, for things that you can, gym owners can do, et cetera. And I wanted to see, because you've done a great job in terms of, like, you've always been training women, and there's, you've obviously never had any problems. But as you get bigger, and you have like interns in there, and you have it's still male-dominated staff. I wanted to see if there's been any changes over the years, or if you feel like you need to change, if you think like there's some things over time that you guys have done to implement anything in terms of policy towards possible sexual harassment, or this idea about some of the things that this gym culture.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that you have to do, that you have to be careful of. I think you have to be careful, and I don't think it's just sexual harassment, but even with kids and sexual abuse, you have to be really careful about putting your hands on people. We talk a lot about, if you're going to put your hands on somebody, and realizing that it's got to be really authoritative, and there can't be any, I guess, it sounds strange, but gentle touch is a problem. You know what I mean? If you're going to pull somebody's shoulders back, then pull their freaking shoulders back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always say, don't touch them. If you touch them like you're doing something wrong, they're going to feel like you're doing something wrong. But if you authoritatively, even for me, like it's terrible to say, but we have to talk a lot, people about tightening their stomachs, tightening their glutes. I always tell everybody, you kick people in the ass and you poke them in the stomach. And that sounds terrible, but I mean, you can't be poking somebody's butt, even though, when you tighten your glutes, I'm just trying to get you to tighten your glutes. You can't do stuff like that.
You used to do it though, right?
Right, I used to. And with the women that I coached that I knew, I probably did do it and just like, hey, whatever, I do it to a guy, I do it to a woman. But I've gotten to the point now where I realize, okay, you just can't, I used to joke about stuff like that. And you can't even joke anymore, sort of, well, if we're friends, we can do it kind of thing, because you just realize that you're opening way too many doors for people when you do it. So it's like, no, okay, let's just not do it. You know what I mean? If you want someone to tighten their glutes, give them a quick tap with the toe of your shoe, as opposed to, anything else. But because I do think there is that time, like, hey, you've got to make contact with people. Unfortunately, in our business, it's the type of thing where you have to be careful. And it's even, it's stupid, but how long can you touch somebody for? How long is too long? There's a lot of, it's such a different world than a slippery slope. And we start flat out. One, workers can't date clients. That's rule one for us off the bat. So I think that eliminates a lot of the sexual harassment part of it right there, in terms of, you got to know right off the hop, hey, this is not a singles bar. This is not a place to meet women. It's a place to meet people. Great. You're going to meet lots of people. You're going to meet lots of nice people. But if you're thinking that you're coming to find, your husband or your wife or your significant other here, then you're in the wrong place as far as we're concerned. Yeah. And again, if people happen to do that outside of the gym, I guess that's okay. But we strongly discourage that. And I don't think we've had very much of it. I won't say we've never had any, but I will say we've not had very much. And so, yeah, I think there's just a lot. The other thing, too, is we've always treated everybody the same. And I don't like to say I've treated our women like men, but I've always treated our women athletes like athletes and not, I don't look at it and think female athlete. And I've never done that from a training standpoint, and I've never done it from a behavioral standpoint. But I think treat our men differently. Again, I don't swear. I very rarely raise my voice. So, and that's different. I think that was different too. Getting out of the college environment, I think I would occasionally raise my voice more. I would occasionally probably swear more when I had just men's teams, but I would never. It's like, okay, you just don't do it. And then we also have policies as far as music. We're not going to play. I think part of the problem too, and this makes me sound like an old man, but when you listen to some of the rap music and some of the ways that they talk about women in the songs, you shouldn't be playing that stuff in your gym.
Yeah.
And so for us, we do not allow, there's no explicit music allowed. Our music is all censored in terms of you're never going to hear any negative words really about race, about gender, about any of those things coming over our musical system. And I've been in some gyms where I'm horrified with the music that they're playing. And people will write that off as, oh, that's just, that's music now. And I'm like, well, not in our facility. It's not music now.
Yeah, I've been embarrassed at that. Like, I've had some older women downstairs with, in the gym that I rent from once a week that I sold. That was mine. And they have some music on. They have, a lot of their demographic is women and older women. And some of the things that they say, and I'm like, I have to look away because I'm like, this is really, really embarrassing.
Oh, yeah. No, some of it, and some of it, when I get to a point where I wouldn't say the lyric, I know that's a problem. And I can remember once, because when I worked for the Red Sox, I didn't have the musical control that I would have liked because, again, you're dealing with, guys that are grown men and they want to listen to what they want to listen to. And it's not like I'm not the sole boss of the Boston Red Sox. And sometimes I would look at guys and think, did they just say what I think they said? And somebody would laugh and go, yeah, that's what they said. And again, all male culture, very typical. And I think this is part of the problem is that there's a lot that goes on in sort of these all male cultures that really I would look at it and say it's not acceptable. But again, I think there's some females in these, again, the music industry is a perfect example who play right into some of the things that are problematic. So
absolutely.
I guess, as I said, there's a lot to it, and it's a very slippery slope. And I think that you have to be more careful now than you ever did in the culture that we live in. And I think people have to be, you have to be careful how you comment on people's pictures. There's just so many things that you didn't have to think about before. We had a harassment situation where another trainer was making, not at my facility, but at another facility, was making inappropriate comments on women athletes' pictures that they were training. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't be like, whatever, I can't even say the words because then I sound like one of those guys, but just, that's stuff that we didn't have to think about. We didn't have social media, and we didn't have to be worried about somebody posting a picture and then somebody posting a comment and deciding if that comment was appropriate or not. And I think we've always had to worry about the kind of hands-on, hands-off sort of rule. And I think in our field, when you're trying to teach things tactfully, I think that's probably the biggest kind of gray area, slippery slope, because I feel like you do have to make contact with people. It is very difficult sometimes to teach somebody something without some tactile stimulation. And so, again, as I said, one of the things, but we do talk about it. I always say, if you act creepy, people will think you're creepy. If you act professional, people will think you're professional. So,
agreed.
And I've been through it again. I had, when you talk about sexual harassment and all these things, I dealt with Allie Raceman and, the gymnasts and the doctors. There's just some horrible things that people have done to women and men. It's bizarre when you think of sort of the level of perversion to try to make people think that this is part of the process. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But,
it is. And
and that's what you really need to understand. You need to understand the sexual abuse, and that's obviously what Molly's course is trying to do, and how abusers manage to work their way into situations that, you think like, how could this ever happen? And yet it's been happening. It's been happening for thousands of years, males, females, whatever. I mean, where people find a way.
Yep.
And sadly, a gym is a way, like many other things. So.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think, there's a lot of stuff in this, like even in the interview that people are going to hear in a couple minutes, just like in terms of having some signage and having an actual policy and making sure people really understand all that. Like taking a few extra steps, especially as your gym gets bigger, anybody's gym gets bigger, and you have more and more people in there, and you have less control sometimes over some of those things. So definitely a really good resource that Molly has put together in the interview. I really enjoyed the interview. Molly articulates her points well. So, Coach, on that note, I'm going to let you go. I do want to say publicly, thanks again for 11 years ago taking a chance on something you had no idea what a podcast was, but you did it anyway because you trusted me. So I really appreciate it. It's been a great 11 years, and I think we've helped a couple of people, if not maybe at least 10.
Oh, my God. I would go into the thousands of people that you've helped. It was an amazing idea, and you were really forward-thinking, and you were right when you said, I want to do a podcast. I think the first thing I said was, what's a podcast?
Don't worry about it.
It had something to do with iPods or one of those things. I was like, okay, podcast, I guess. But never would I have guessed that podcasts, period, were going to become what they've become. It's amazing now in terms of the number of people who are learning via listening, which I don't think it wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? When you think about sort of kind of iPhone, iPod, they're just, obviously there were audio books, but I don't think that people were as tuned into that. And now suddenly with this whole idea of podcasts and podcasting, it's just so common that people will spend hours listening. It's great for me. I mean, when you're traveling and suddenly you think, okay, I got a long stretch. I drove Mark up to Vermont to a tournament this weekend, and I listened to a bunch. I kind of caught up on my Strength Coach podcast because I had 3 hours and 37 minutes in each direction.
Nice. All right, Coach. We'll let you go. Have a good time at your appointment, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
All right, guys. Right now at Perform Better, they got the Spend More, Save More sale. 10% savings, anything you spend over 50, 15%, anything over 100, and 20% off 150 or more. So the more you spend, the more you save. Remember, if you're opening a gym, they have an amazing facility design team. The guys, they do everything for you. Don't miss out on all the services they have for their facility design team. Check it out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars.
Hey, this is Adam.
And this is Tim.
Welcome to the Trainer Heroic Data-Driven Coaching segment.
Yes.
Today, Tim, let's talk about the strength coach bias.
Oh, man.
And shortly put, this is the bias, because we like strength, that getting stronger is always the answer.
Yeah, that would be great if it was.
It'd be fantastic. And yeah, this is reinforced by a lot of things. So your experience in football, Tim, you're talking about is one example.
Yeah, so everyone wants to increase their bench press, right? They see it in the combine. Coaches think that, you have you can bench press 225, 40 times. You're going to be a better pass rusher, for example. But we know that there's a kind of like a soft edge there, if you will, that when you get to a certain point, maybe that's not going to be the best thing to focus on for that particular athlete.
Yeah, so maybe it's time to assess your opportunity for marginal gains.
Ooh,
there,
I like
right?
that.
So, for every unit of work you put in, what are you getting back? And I remember, this goes back to maybe a talk I heard Brian Mann give at NSA National, where he mentioned that, for athletic outcomes in the squat, for example, it seems to make a lot of difference until you get up to about a double bodyweight squat. And then thereafter, it's you may as well focus on something else, right? The reactive component, speed work, jumping, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So what he's essentially saying is yes, if you squat double body weight, right, that's going to show some improvement in your overall athletic ability. But you're not going to get that much better once you hit double body weight to anything above that. So focus on things like foot speed, reactivity, maybe even things like hand fighting, some stuff you can do in the weight room that's going to really push you from being a great athlete to an elite athlete once you're at that point.
I mean, really what we're talking about here is like a trend toward more specificity there. So
that's it.
When you're weak, getting strong it makes a difference. The other guy's strong, he's gonna beat you down. But
no kidding.
But over the course of your career, if you get so to speak strong enough, which gasp.
Yeah, how dare you, Coach?
What a problem to have, right?
Yeah.
It'd be lovely if every one of your athletes squatted double body weight with perfect technique. That'd be fantastic. But,
no kidding.
So, again, referencing this Brian Mann thing, one of his suggestions was like maybe you need different training for people who are above a certain level of strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question I get all the time from basketball, sport coaches is let's increase that vertical jump, right? Because we want to be the best rebounding team in the league. But if you have a senior and you want him to be the conference rebounding champion, right? He's probably already jumping. If he's not working on jumping, he's a basketball player. There's an issue there, right? I mean, but he's probably already jumping almost as high as he can jump. So working on that vertical jump may not be best practice. It might be, again, let's work on body position, maybe jumping out of a boxing out stance, or maybe something like reaction to a ball coming off the iron.
Right. So you're trying to bring those specific skills, the sport-specific skills, and train those.
Right.
Instead of just training the general quality forever.
Absolutely. And those are things, again, that we can track data with. We can supply that data to the coach, and we can prove that things such as reactivity and foot speed and jumping from a certain body position will increase those sport skills from the weight room to the court.
Great. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for us today. Be sure to go to trainheroic.com to start your 14-day free trial. When you're talking to one of our representatives, tell them the Strength Coach podcast sent you to get 10% off a year of the Pro or Elite Edition.
What's going on, everyone? It's time to make some money. This is the Business of Fitness section. As usual, your favorite spot on the Strength Coach podcast. And this is an interesting one, a little different one than normal. We've got a lot of questions recently, and we've got a lot of people in our coaching group who are couples, married or couples. And how do you make it work being business partners as a life partners too, as a couple? So we've had quite a few amazing couple business owners in our mastermind coaching group, and it can be a winning formula for many, but it's also not right for everyone. And we've also seen some couples who would be better not in business together, right? Because they're killing their business and it's killing their relationship because they're fighting. So you have to figure out what's right for you. So for Rachel and I, is a few strategies that have helped. Number one, I just do what I'm told. Boom. End of this episode, guys. See you next time. No, I'm only kidding, but I do what I'm told. The biggest thing is designate the responsibilities in the business very clearly. We don't have two people doing the same things, right? We're not both doing programming, both doing marketing, running the team, where you get two people doing it. We have very clear roles. So who's in charge of what, right? And then trust your partner to do their role, because they're going to trust you to do your designated roles without stepping on each other's toes. Now, that doesn't mean you don't ask each other for advice or share stuff, but we designate these roles and keep it clear. So that's right. I'm telling you, stop telling each other what to do. Part two is learn to compartmentalize and not always bring work home. And that's a challenge, but at 10 at night on a Friday, if I was partners with Anthony Renna, I wouldn't call him up with an idea of what we're going to do on staff training next Wednesday. But it's hard to not just, say that to your wife who's sitting in the same room as you, right? But my business partner's not at home with me right now. It's my wife, and I've got to separate those roles. And it's hard when you're both passionate and excited about the business that you're building together. So in the short term, maybe you can't not talk about it, but at least only limit it to the positive stuff. No complaining about staff or clients at home if you can, right? And I can tell you funny stories of Rachel and I sitting in the driveway on our cell phones, talking to each other who are in our cars in the driveway to try to finish being business talk before we went home for the evening, right? So it's quite a challenge sometimes. And then finally, agree that your relationship with each other is a number one priority, and any disagreements about the business, side note, there will be disagreements, will not affect the two of you as a couple. Like, I would walk away from the business first, or we would separate or do something, right? Just, you have to have it that it will not affect what the two you have as a couple. And especially in the first couple of years where you're in the grind phase with the long hours and no money and wearing all the hats, and you'll be tested physically and emotionally during the grind phase. So it's easy to get short with each other. And money is usually the number one fight at that stage. So take the time to learn how to manage your money and understand finances and get on the same page as each other with your financial goals, right? But that's the idea. Is it's a complete like I'll make a joke that I coach Rachel for some of the obstacle course racing. So I have a role as her coach, I have a role as her business partner, and I have a role as her husband. And she can be mad at 2 or 3 of them at any one time, right? But there's always one role where she's not mad, and vice versa, right? That you compartmentalize the roles as much as you can, and you can't be all things at the same time. And for the guys listening, if all else fails, guys, just remember, a happy wife is a happy life. That's my best advice I can give you. And that's it for this episode of the Business of Fitness segment. That was really the relationship segment on the Strength Coach podcast. Guys, if you have any questions or anything you want to follow up on, please reach out to me on any of my social media platforms or in the Strength Coach forum. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Welcome to the Functional Movement Systems segment. My name is Jenna Gourlay, and today I would like to start a 2-part series about a basketball player I worked with recently. For part 1, I will go over how we looked at and screened both her movement and her capacity. This is one of my favorite cases because it represents how the movement system works in its entirety, and it really shows the impact that it can have on the individual. So here we have a Division I college basketball player going into her junior season at forward. When we saw her initially, she recently completed her spring season, and she decided that she was going to stick around for summer to prepare for the upcoming preseason. Now, summer here is very informal, but the players do have a strength and conditioning program, and they play pickup games with one of the other universities nearby. This particular player initially came to me with a recent hamstring strain that she had done during one of those pickup games. When she first came in, she had pain at rest and she wasn't able to play. So when she came in, she was at the level of the SFMA, or the Selective Functional Movement Assessment, our healthcare-based model of the FMS. We use the SFMA with injuries to break down the individual parts of movement before we actually look at the patterns. So just to give you a little bit of a background, this player had no previous injuries besides ankle sprains, and she had a resolved concussion. Prior to this, she had been training just fine without any issues. When we asked her about her goals, of course, she wanted to be pain-free, but she also stated that she wanted to improve her power at the post, especially when she goes up for contested shots. What will be interesting later is that she ran an 8:34 mile the day before she was injured. So one of the things that they have to prepare for going into the preseason is to be able to run a mile at a certain time. Before that, she ran an 8:34 mile was her best time. Now, since she's not in season, we shut her down while we worked on her rehab before returning her to training. Once she was pain-free, about 2 weeks later, we put her through the functional movement screen, the FMS, and the fundamental capacity screen, the FCS. Now, where the FMS is the function-based screen, the FCS looks at the physical elements of her performance. It's going to break down the physical attributes into 4 main quadrants. The first being movement control, or balance at the limits of stability. The second being postural control, or her ability to maintain her posture under load. The third being explosive control, or power. And the fourth being impact control, or the ability to recycle the power that she creates. We always want to fix a functional problem first before a performance or a fitness problem, but when I'm able to, I like to test both at the beginning. I know I'm going to start by fixing the FMS patterns before the FCS patterns, but having all that information ahead of time allows me to see if maybe fixing a functional problem actually results in fixing a capacity problem. I've had clients who improve their broad jump by nearly 20% after we fix their rotary stability. So knowing the information of the FCS ahead of time is not only powerful for me and my confidence in what I'm doing, but also for my client to see, wow, we worked on rolling and that made my jump better. Now, initially, her FMS, when we looked at it, was completely pain-free. All of her patterns were good, except for her inline lunge and her trunk stability push-up. She's an athlete, and while she didn't have pain on any of the functional level, I do want to see how she does when we go up to a more performance level at the FCS. So when we first looked at her motor control screen, we're looking at her ability to be on her single arm or single leg and balance at the limit of her stability. What we found was a deficit. Now, this test is much like the Y balance test, if you're familiar with that, except the motor control screen just looks at one component and it gives it a snapshot of her motor control. We then looked at her carry screen, where she carries 75% of her body weight, to get an idea of what her postural integrity is under load. And then to look at her explosive control or her power, we have her do a broad jump, and then we dissect out the broad jump. So we have her do it without the contribution of her arms, and we also have her do it on each leg. Finally, we looked at her impact control and how well she could recycle her energy with doing a bound and also a triple and a double broad jump. For her, she had dysfunction with the upper body motor control screen, or her ability to essentially plank on one arm while moving the other as far as possible under control. Her carry was good. Her power and her energy storing were below the cut, and pretty significantly. Her broad jump was actually less than her height, where we'd expect it to be at least 110%, and we actually see more than that in most basketball players. To put this in perspective, this is a collegiate basketball player who's 70 inches tall, and she couldn't cover 68 inches in her broad jump. And then we looked at her triple broad jump, and that was actually less than if she was to do 3 consecutive broad jumps in a row. So where we would expect her to take energy from her first broad jump and apply it to her second and her third, she was actually losing distance where we'd expect her to be gaining distance. And then her 2-1-2 bound off one leg was only minimally better than when she just did a plain broad jump off of one leg. So it's telling us that she's really not doing anything to energy store or to use her power and to repurpose it. Once we have all of her data, then we're going to start trying to improve her patterns and her physical resources. So stay tuned, because that's what we're going to talk about next time when we discuss how we improved her mile time by 43 seconds and how we were able to improve her broad jump by 8 inches using the screen to dictate our training. That's it for today. My name is Jenna Gourlay, and this has been a Functional Movement System segment. For more information, please check out functionalmovement.com, and thanks for listening.
All right, now it's time for the MariGold Bars Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment. And today I have on Molly Galbraith. Molly is the founder and woman in charge at Girls Gone Strong. Molly, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me, Ant. I'm excited to chat about this topic today and raise more awareness about it.
All right, well, let me give everybody a little bit of background. In August, there was a prominent speaker, nutrition speaker, Alan Aragon, and he was at a conference, and it turned out that there was some sexual harassment. He had a history of it, and it all kind of came to a big tipping point in August at a conference. And it turned out that more and more people were not only coming out against him and situations and brought up situations, but other situations that other people had with speakers and in gyms, etc. And so I called Molly because she's pretty much the premier authority in our business on all of these issues, and I wanted to get her on because of something that I did, and what happened in this situation was I guess they were in a bar, and whatever happened, he was grabbing her and he was saying stuff to her. But I kind of minimized it in terms of not from being like from a jerk point of view, but I was kind of like, well, I'm glad she's safe. Wow, I'm really glad it wasn't rape. And so basically by doing that, I was minimizing her experience. And I kind of called myself out on it. And I wanted to get Molly on because I felt like, man, I don't know anything about this type of stuff. Do I really know what harassment is? And there was all these things coming up, and I heard so many different opinions on Facebook, and I was like, I got to get Molly on. So here we are. So Molly, just give everybody a little bit of a background about like that, what I was experiencing or what I said or how I minimized her experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is obviously such a big topic, and I'm super grateful that you are willing to get introspective and recognize. Here's the biggest thing. Let me start by saying this: there's a massive difference in intent and impact, right? And I think that's a really powerful thing that we as coaches can take into everything that we do, right? So even when we're coaching clients, we might if we might say, ask them a question, or I know back in the day, 8-10 years ago, someone would do an exercise and I would insinuate that exercise might cause pain for them, right? I would suggest pain. Like my intent in that moment was not to was not to harm that client, but suggesting that pathologizing a movement, suggesting that a particular movement might be painful for them, the impact of that was negative, right? Even though my intention was good. So this happens all the time. We are consistently doing the best we can, but our intentions might be positive, right? You were saying, wow, I'm glad something really violently horrific did not happen to her. But the impact is minimizing or downplaying what happened to her. So this is something that we call like a kind of an all-encompassing thing called rape culture. So that's the social conditioning that we collectively experience in which sexual violence is tolerated, downplayed, excused, normalized, joked about, or even promoted. And it serves to excuse the actions of the people who, commit these crimes and then blame the victims at the same time. So that's a quote from a woman named Erica Smith, who's a sexuality educator with a master's degree, who writes a lot of our articles. So this idea of rape culture can be thought of, and I posted this on my Facebook page shortly after it happened, as a pyramid. And we love pyramids in the world of strength and conditioning, right? It's this idea that there's this foundation and it goes all the way up to the top. But what's at the bottom, is at the bottom of the pyramid, lays the foundation for everything else. And so in this rape culture that you brought up, at the very bottom we have normalization. So the normalization is like normalization of inappropriate behavior. And the thing is it's all part of rape culture, right? But it spans a spectrum from somewhat inappropriate to horrifically violent. And the stuff at the top, again, as we know in strength and conditioning, can't exist without stuff at the bottom. So the bottom is the normalization. So that's like boys will be boys. What was she wearing? How much did she have to drink? I'm glad she didn't get raped. Like, all that kind of like, hey, this stuff is okay. It's not that big of a deal. Things like that. And then the next level is like degrading or dehumanizing. So that's saying like, I don't think of you, I don't think that you're worthy of respect, basically. So that's catcalling, whistling, guys sending unsolicited pictures of their genitalia, which happens a lot to, women in fitness and, women on dating sites and things like that, stalking or following. So things like where you're dehumanizing or saying like, I don't believe you're worthy of respect. And then the next level is removal of autonomy. So saying like, you don't get to be in charge of your body. I get to do what I want to your body. So these are things like groping or any other kind of unwanted touching. And then at the top of the pyramid, we have explicit violence, which is like rape and things like that. So, but the problem is so many of us we're so conditioned to not even recognize these types of things. So an example that I like to ask a lot of guys, and I'll ask you, is like, can you remember distinctly the first time you heard one of your friends say something sexual about a woman or catcall a woman? Like, is that memory like burned in your brain, or does it feel like it's just something that kind of always happened?
Yeah, it kind of feels like it always happened.
Yeah. So many guys, they cannot remember the first time they hear a guy friend say something sexual or just, in a disrespectful way or whatever about a woman, or they can't remember the first time their friend catcalled or whistled, because it's just all of a sudden it feels like it's just something that people do, right? It's normal. And so, but that type of behavior is kind of what begins to lay the foundation for thinking, women, it's okay for us to sexualize women. It's okay for us to, objectify women. It's okay for us to say and do what we want, right? It's okay for us to, hit on them in these ways that, that we think is fine. And so that lays the foundation for the more kind of explicit stuff to happen. And it happens, in media, it happens in government, it happens with like really really short and soft sentences on people who are convicted of crimes. So we see it happen in the legal system. We see it happen in media. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, in the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, you'll see 29 women be raped 50 times, which is just unbelievable. And you cannot tell me that doesn't desensitize you to the idea of that act, because it just does. It's, you see this horrific violence 50 times over the course of 5 seasons, and that's just in one show. And so we're consistently seeing, violent, and again, we say violence against women. If you think about the idea of violence against women, who's doing it to them? You're not even saying who's doing it. It's not men, men who attack women, or men who are violent, violent toward women, or men who assault women. It's violence against women. It's a passive construct, as if it's something that just happens to women and there's no one actually doing it. So there's a whole lot involved in, in laying the foundation for this stuff to happen. And so, and we're all involved in it. You know what I mean? Like, I have participated in varying degrees of rape culture by dismissing or minimizing or normalizing or, sexualizing other women, or, whatever. I have participated in it as well. So it's not about pointing fingers. It's not about saying you're a bad person. It's about saying, hey, I'm a fish. I can't see the water. I can't see the water. I've always been swimming in it, and saying like, hey, this isn't cool. I want to do something about it. I need to learn more about it so that I can not only help create a safer environment for my clients and help create, safe gym or training environment, and also protect yourself and your own reputation.
Yeah, because obviously, the business that we're in lends itself to a lot of these situations in terms of, number one, the way we do, all of us dress, when we go to a gym, male or female. So there can be a lot of sexual energy in a gym. There's also this idea about what we're doing in our business. We're trainers, right? And so a lot of times we're either, we become close to our clients, or we might touch them for real reasons, but for good intentions, I mean. So this industry, and that's again why I wanted to get you on, because it was kind of like thinking, man, I don't really know any of this obvious beyond the obvious stuff, slapping somebody in the butt or catcalls or that type of stuff. But even some of the like just regular touching, or because I do tend to use my hands a lot, and I will touch your arm or when I talk to you, not if I don't know you, but But so there's now I'm kind of afraid of some of those things, and I'm not that I'm trying to pick up women in a gym, so I'm not going up to anybody saying, hey, how you doing? What do you come here often type of thing, but right. But I want our gym owners, I want our trainers to really understand how we can what we can, like, what this looks like, number one, right, and number two, what we can do differently. So from that perspective, well, actually, I just want to take a step back. Can you talk to us about this idea about a rape schedule? Because a lot of guys, I never thought of that. I'm like, oh my God, this is another thing that, and when I learned about it, I started to think about things that I always tell my wife, places to walk, etc. So talk to us about a rape schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I want to be clear, when we say the word rape, if that kind of like makes you shudder a little bit or gives you a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, that's a good thing. Okay. So like we're talking about these things that are really intense. And I think using intense words like rape culture and rape schedule can sometimes make people feel a bit defensive or even turn them off a little bit, because they're like, well, I've never raped anybody. This doesn't apply to me. Right. But this is talking about this broader culture and this broader idea of the things that women experience, and the things that the rape schedule, for example, are the things that we do to try and protect ourselves from harassment or assault. So the idea of a rape schedule is what the things that women do all throughout their day, often subconsciously, to try to avoid sexual violence or being attacked or harassment or assault or anything like that. And the interesting thing is a lot of these things are trying to protect us from harassment or assault from strangers. But the thing is that the majority of assault and rape actually happens with people that we know. So, and that's another kind of a problem, is that, we, as women and men, we think of rape as something that happens in a back alley by a stranger, but it often happens, like, again, by friends. It's happens by family members, happens by people you're on a date with, like things like that. So, so the wild thing is we're doing a lot of these things to protect us from strangers, but oftentimes the people that we're closest to are the ones who are most likely to do this. So, I put up a poll on my Instagram stories, and I asked women, what are some things that you do daily to try and protect yourself from harassment or assault? And within 24 hours, I had over 250 responses. And some of their answers that are gym related were: avoid wearing tight or revealing clothing to the gym so I don't attract attention. Try to go to the gym when it's not busy so guys don't leer at me in the weight room. Change my schedule to avoid a particular creepy gym member. Don't go to workouts where men are coaching. Only go to classes that are led by women. Wear track pants over my shorts when I walk to the gym to decrease harassment. Wear my headphones on my 10-minute walk so I don't hear the cat calls. That one, Nagar Fanuni has talked about that. When she walks to her gym, she has to wear headphones because she can't stand hearing the cat calls during her 10-minute walk. Other women only wear one headphone in so that they can be aware at all times. Switch your route to the gym because they were passing by a construction site and consistently experienced harassment. Switched gyms because the manager always commented on this woman's body in ways that he thought were compliments, and she didn't feel like anyone would believe her if she reported him since he was a manager. Stopped going to the gym altogether because she had bad experiences at 3 gyms in a row. Switched her workouts so she never has to deadlift or hip thrust when the gym is busy. So those are all kind of related to the gym. And then other things that women are doing in their everyday lives: never drink alcohol unless I'm in the presence of trusted friends. Only wear headphones in one ear to maintain awareness. Choose clothing carefully when I know I have to walk on the street for more than a few blocks. Look men I'm passing on the street directly in the eye with a very stern expression. Other women avoid eye contact with men on the street. One woman, and this just gave me chills, she said every time she passes a man on the street, to the best of her ability, she repeats to herself what he looks like 3 times so she can remember identifying characteristics.
Wow.
Which is just like, that is so intense. Call my partner, mom, or friend anytime I'm walking at night. Check the back seat of the car every time I get in. Only park in well-lit areas and refuse to park in dark areas. Don't schedule night classes in college so I don't walk alone at night. Ask a male manager to walk me to my car when I leave work. Avoid working late at my office when I know a particular coworker who creeps me out is also working so I don't have to be alone with him. Never get on the elevator alone with a man. I mean, it's just like, it is exhausting when you think about the mental energy that women put in and the things that they're not able to do in their lives, right? If you have a work project that you need to finish in your office, but there's a particular creepy guy who's working late at the same, the same as you, and you don't want to do that, like, how do you have to change your life? Okay, so maybe you have to go home so you're not at the office alone with him. And then maybe you have to switch your schedule the next day so that you can get up early and get to the office to finish your project. So then maybe you have to miss your workout. You're more tired. You're not as effective. You know what I mean? Like, It's just like on and on and on and on. There's so much labor and energy that women have to put into these particular, kind of life changes that we make in order to quote unquote keep ourselves safe.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. And, again, as gym owners, as trainers, we definitely have a responsibility to kind of protect, not just because it's the right thing to do only. Obviously, that's the main reason. Mm-hmm. But if you have a business, you should be aware of some of these things as well. Now, you guys did a survey in 2017, and women who had a negative experience with their coach or trainer, 97%. It was because of their trainer, but only 3.5, they got rid of them. 3.5% shared the truth about why, and at least 16% switched gyms altogether. Yeah. That's really crazy.
Yeah, it is. And so, and I always tell that. So I'll share all these statistics when I give these talks. I share these statistics about, about why this stuff's bad for women. And then I always circle back around to like, and if you don't care about women, let's talk about your bottom line. And, that's the thing. Like, I think a large portion of the population certainly will be, eager to learn more about this and participate in this because they care about women. There are women in their lives that they, that they think of when they think of like, oh gosh, well, I don't want this to happen to them, right? They've got daughters or wives or sisters or whatever. But for some people, truly, you have to talk about like, you could lose it all. You know what I mean? Like you're risking your reputation. You're risking, there's a financial risk, there's liability. There was a woman that I know through Instagram who was, harassed at her gym a couple months ago, and she went to the managers and they didn't do anything about it. The guy she has it on video, he literally touched her. Like he walked past and brushed up against her. He kept walking really close to her while she was deadlifting. Every time she would hinge back to deadlift, he'd walk really close to her, right behind her. And then I think at one point he actually brushed up against her. And there were plenty of other places in the gym for him to be lifting. And when she said something to him about it, he basically cussed her up and down. And so then she reported it to the management, and they didn't do anything until, according to, they didn't do anything meaningful. Let's say that. And she said it felt like that they didn't believe her and all this stuff. And until she reported it on Instagram, and I'm not sure what the outcome has been for that gym so far, but certainly, I know that they got a lot of bad press about it from people in their community and all over the internet. And here's the thing. If you're not well versed in how to handle claims of harassment or assault within the gym, the EEOC, so the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, has posted they've got information about the costs of harassment and assault claims to businesses. But if you're not well versed in how to handle them, then how you handle them can be seen as retaliation against the person who reported it. And courts are actually handing down much heavier and more expensive rulings for businesses who retaliate against victims, even greater than whatever the original harassment was. So if you claim harassment and the organization handles it well and you win your claim, right, they might recommend that you do some training and that the person who experienced it gets some money. But if it's found that you handled it poorly and that you retaliated against the person, then the sentences that your gym, if you were convicted, the sentences that your gym would be handed would be much bigger and more expensive. So not knowing how to handle this, again, not only bad for your gym members, but also bad for you as a business owner and incredibly risky. So understanding how to handle these claims appropriately and protect the person who is reporting them is incredibly important. And let's be honest, 67 to 75% of people who hire a coach or trainer are women. And we know that if you're based in the U.S., at least 81% of those women have experienced harassment at some point, and at least 33% of them have been sexually assaulted. And so if you work with women, you're working with women who have been harassed and assaulted. And so making it clear where your gym or your business or where you as an individual trainer stands on the topic of harassment and assault and keeping women safe, that's good for business. If women know that they can, that you take a hard stance against it and that they can trust you and that they can trust you to handle their claim if they bring one to you, it swings the pendulum really far in the other direction, right? So it goes from it being a huge risk and liability to it being a huge win for having female clients who want to come to your gym.
Yeah, and you don't want to create any kind of bad culture in terms of, like your statistics said, only 3.5% shared the truth about why they left that gym, or didn't come anymore. So, you could be, as a gym owner or a trainer, you could be in the dark about what's going on, even if you're the good guy, even if it's somebody else in the gym that's doing stuff, or whether it be music that's playing even, or the way some guys talk in the gym, right?
No, yeah, and I was going to say, here's the thing: even if it reminded me of this when you said this, Aunt. Even if you're the good guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women are just so exhausted by telling their story, telling the story of their trauma, right? So say a woman is harassed in your gym, and the harassment is considered quote unquote mild, right? Like it's not that big of a deal. But she could be a sexual assault survivor, and she could have shared that story with people before and not been believed. And she could just be like, you know what? I'm so tired of sharing my trauma with people. I'm so tired of like explaining why this happened to me, or, how this happened to me and why it's such a big deal, that it's not even worth telling this guy who may or may not believe me, or may ask me for a bunch of questions, or may feel really skeptical about what happened. Like, it's not even worth going to him and telling him. So I'm just going to switch gyms anyway. So even if you're a good guy, right? If this woman's had really negative experiences with this in the past, so the harassment could be relatively mild. You could be a quote unquote good guy, but if she's just so exhausted from sharing that information with people, it's probably just going to feel easier to go somewhere else. Yeah. But if you have a firm anti-harassment policy that everybody knows about, and you have harassment, anti-harassment signage up in the gym, and you make it super clear to your clients when they sign up with you, hey, just so you know, we have a firm anti-harassment policy for all, gym members and staff. And we've got, if anything ever happens to you, come to us and we'll investigate it, thoroughly, and we'll, protect you in the case, and, we'll err on the side of caution and all of these kinds of things. So I want you to know that you can always come to us if this ever happens. And, then she is going to be significantly more likely. She's going to feel like you have her back in all of the ways, whether it's about harassment or not. She's going to say, hey, especially if it's a guy, this guy really understands the experiences of women. He has my back. I can come to him and trust him with anything. Like, this is the person that this is the gym where I want to train. This is the person I want to train with.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just reminds me of being in the bar business. I remember I worked for, like this celebrity bar owner. And, in the beginning, we always had to go through this thing with the staff and the orientation. Like, look, if somebody's harassed you, you can tell the managers. And if, if you're not comfortable telling the manager, here's the number to the corporate office. Call the corporate office, right? Mm-hmm. So it kind of had these plans so the girls always felt, because we hired all women bartenders and waitresses, mm-hmm. and they felt comfortable knowing that, okay, if the manager's a creep, then I can go to corporate. So just mm-hmm. having that contingency plan, I know a lot of them expressed to me that they felt really they felt good about that. So
yeah, totally.
So yeah, and we'll get into a few more things that we can do as gym owners. But Molly, what are some other? I know we're going to talk about the course. The course is called "What You Can Do About Sexual Harassment and Assault in the Health and Fitness Industry." It's a 5-day course that you put together, and we're going to give everybody information on that. And day 2, you say common mistakes that even the good guys make. What are some other things that we should kind of be aware of?
In terms of the common mistakes that good guys make, or the things? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, so I would love to talk about those a little bit. Like you said, there are things that guys who want to be allies to women, who want to be people who are super helpful to women, but still find themselves making those mistakes as well. So we'll cover a couple of those. So first things first would be laughing or brushing off behavior and comments that aren't okay. So there are, again, as guys, you are probably, even if you're not the one participating in these types of comments, you're probably around guys who are doing things that are inappropriate. So things like, laughing or shrugging it off when you hear other people making jokes about like harassment or assault or rape. Staying quiet when you hear other people excuse the behavior. So, for example, so if you hear somebody making a joke, right, and you kind of laugh or shrug it off, and then if somebody else steps in, they're like, hey, that's not cool. And somebody's like, whatever, it's just how guys talk. It doesn't mean anything. So staying quiet when that's happening. Mm-hmm. So basically allowing all of this kind of normalizing and excusing to go on, laughing or making a joke when a woman shares an experience of being harassed or objectified. So even, and we could put your kind of original thought or comment in that one, Ant, where a woman says, hey, this happened to me. And you're like, oh, I mean, that's a good thing she didn't get raped, right? Mm-hmm. Like again, intention there is like, wow, I'm really happy that she didn't experience this thing that's horrifically violent, but it could also be seen as like, I mean, what's the big deal, right? He just touched her butt. So yeah, so the next one is actually responding with, it's not like he raped her, right? In response to hearing about a man harassing or assaulting a woman, making rape jokes, even if they aren't about women. So again, that's another one. I've heard people make a really, they're trying to make a point, but it actually minimizes the idea of rape. So there's a saying that's like, don't say anything to a woman that you wouldn't want a really big guy to say to you in prison, which again is like, it's kind of supposed to be a joke. It's kind of supposed to be a thing to raise awareness. And it's also minimizing the horrible violence that, oftentimes men experience when they're incarcerated. So making jokes about rape, not cool. So laughing or brushing off behavior and comments that aren't okay. Focusing on the woman who was harassed or assaulted instead of the man who harassed or assaulted her. So this is a really big one. And again, it can be unintentional. So if I came to you and was like, hey, Aunt, this just happened to me, you might be like, oh my gosh, what happened? Where were you? Like, did you try to fight him off? Like, why didn't you leave? I don't, like asking me all these questions, like, have you been drinking? Like, asking me all these questions, trying to get information about what happened instead of saying like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did this to you. Like, what can you tell me more about what he did? Right. Instead of like, what were you wearing? Were you drinking? You should have known better than to walk back to his apartment or be sitting in that booth with him all alone, or, things like that. Or getting angry at a woman for ruining the man's career, life, family, reputation. That's a super common one. People saying, I can't believe you're doing this to him. And it's like, he actually did this to himself. But it's so common for women to be the ones who are attacked for hurting a man's, career, life, family, or reputation.
The Kavanaugh hearings are the best example of that right away, right?
Yes, they sure are. And, so many people attacked the women who, attacked the guy that we were talking about earlier, saying like he has a family, and it's like, but that has literally nothing to do with the fact that he was totally inappropriate to me. So yeah, that's a really, really common one. And then let's see. There's a really powerful quote from a guy named Jackson Katz. He says, we talk about how many women were raped last year, not about how many men raped women. We talk about how many girls in a school district were harassed, not how many boys harassed girls. We talk about how many teenage girls in Vermont got pregnant last year instead of how many men and boys impregnated teenage girls. You can see how the use of the passive voice has a political effect. It shifts the focus off of men and boys and onto women and girls. Even the term violence against women is a problem because it's a passive sentence. There's no active agent in that sentence. It's just a bad thing that quote unquote happens to women. Men and boys aren't even part of it. So, you can see again, when we talk about violence against women, harassment against women, things like that, assault against women, it's like, who's doing it to them, right? It even removes it removes the onus of responsibility off of men. And then the last thing is, and this one's a little bit tricky, it's asking multiple questions before offering support, right? So again, when a woman comes to you and says, hey, this happened to me, it's really common to be like, oh my gosh, are you sure that's what happened? Did you tell him no? Like, did you fight back and try to get away? Like, why were you talking to him in the first place? Like all this kind of stuff, instead of saying like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I believe you. How can I help you? How can I be supportive? Or even saying like, hey, I've got a couple questions I want to ask you so I can understand or like what exactly happened so I can support you. Do you mind, can I ask you a couple questions right now? But just know I believe you. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, like being really supportive. I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I want to know how I can best support you. I have a couple questions so I can better understand what happened and understand how I can support you better. Is that okay? Because it's normal to have questions, right? But if you're firing off these questions to her that feel like an interrogation or feel like it's blaming, did you tell him no? Did you fight back? Why were you talking to him in the first place? Why'd you let him buy you a drink? Like all of that feels like an interrogation or a shift of responsibility or blame onto the woman and away from the man. And to be clear, anybody of any gender can be harassed or abused, and anybody of any gender can be the harasser or abuser, but over 90% of the time, it's male to female. harassment and assault. And even when men are harassed or assaulted, men are also most likely to be the ones harassing or assaulting them. So that's why, again, I don't want people to feel like we're saying that this can't happen in other, that there might not be other scenarios where this is happening, because it absolutely can. But that's why so much of what we're focused on is the male to female harassment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because just kind of going over your course, I know in the part of it you did say, you might be feeling frustrated because you want to take this course because you might also feel that you're unsure of what to do and how you can help. Well, now we're starting to get a feel for that. Worried about making a mistake, which is really why I think, like you just talked about some of these questions. I'd probably ask some of those questions, not the what were you wearing type of ones, but I know I would probably overwhelm them with questions. And then I would definitely be afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. I have a habit of doing that in all areas of my life.
And then how do you own up to it if somebody says like, hey, that wasn't cool? Like our automatic reaction is to get defensive, right?
Yes.
Because our intentions are good. So we even have, a downloadable resource in there that's like what to do if you get called out for making a mistake, right? And we give really actionable kind of tools and examples of like, here are the things that you can say and do if someone's like, hey, that thing that you said wasn't cool, or I didn't appreciate when you asked me that question, or you said X, Y, and Z and it made me uncomfortable, right? We have actionable things like an actual script that you can follow or learn from about what to do if that happens.
Excellent. Well, before I let you go, and we talk, give everybody, the links to the course and everything. I do just want to take it one more time. We know we've talked about a lot of different things. You've kind of opened my eyes to a few different things, and I'm sure everyone out there. Let's just talk a little bit more about the gym owner, something that somebody who listens to this right away, somebody can start doing, like you talked about, having some anti-harassment signage, for example, or maybe, sending an email out or talking to new members, or not just new members, current members, like, hey, look, want to make sure that you understand this policy that we have.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you would love to see gym owners doing right away to kind of create a better environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the course, we've got the downloadable resources of the anti-harassment signage and a sample policy. And then I think, like you said, sending out an email saying, hey, we've always been against harassment in the gym, but we realized, that we didn't have a firm policy that states, that fact that we're against it, what the protocol is going to be if you bring it to us, things like that. So I think anti-harassment signage, anti-harassment policy, and then having a staff meeting with all of your staff and being super clear saying, hey, we use a lot of manual cueing in the gym. It's really important for everybody in here to make sure that you ask the client before you touch them, ask them before you manually cue them, and tell them why. So say like, hey, many of my clients find it helpful when I cue them with my hands. So for example, I might put my hands on your upper back to remind you to squeeze your shoulder blades together. Is that okay? I'll let you know before I do it. If it's ever not okay, let me know. And so, making sure that your staff knows that they should be asking for consent before they touch any of the clients, making sure that everybody on the team understands that they're supposed to be demonstrating new moves and new exercises to clients, and always giving them an out if they don't feel comfortable. So for example, if you're teaching a client how to do a hip thrust, say, this is the exercise that we're going to do next. It's called a hip thrust. It's really good for strengthening your glutes. This is what it looks like. If you feel comfortable, are you comfortable trying this? And just like giving them a super quick out, like, are you comfortable trying this? Being really mindful of your own body as a coach, like where you're standing, right? So if someone's doing a Romanian deadlift, you probably shouldn't be standing directly behind them, standing to the side of them. And if you do need to walk around behind them, and just say, hey, I'm going to step behind you real quick and see, make sure your hips are level. And then just do that really quickly and move right back to the side. If your client is doing a glute bridge, kneeling down next to them, kind of like, so that you're more on their level instead of standing over top of them, leering at them, or instead of standing at their feet where you're looking directly at their, at their open legs while they're, glute bridging. So just being really mindful of your own body. So I think the anti-harassment signage, the anti-harassment policy, that stuff's super strong. Sending an email to your members and saying, hey, all of our staff have signed this, and I just want you all to be aware of what our policy is as well. And this policy goes, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, and all the way across, right? So it's not acceptable for anyone to be participating in this. And then making sure your staff knows that they need to ask for consent before they touch clients, that it's important that they demonstrate new moves and always say, like, if you feel comfortable, give this a go. And then being mindful of where they're standing and coaching your clients. I think those are some really actionable things. Oh, and then the last one, watch your language. I think it's there's a lot of language that gets used in the gyms, especially guys talking to other guys. And they might not be aware that there are, well, first of all, if you wouldn't be comfortable saying it in front of a woman, if you wouldn't be comfortable using that language in front of a woman, it's probably a sign that that it's not best to use anyway. And so, that's something to keep in mind. So it's not like, hey, just use this when you're sure there's no women around. But, even if it's language you normally use between your guy friends, if there are women around and they hear you use that language, then they might be like, hey, this isn't a gym where, women are respected. And here's the thing, that the tides are changing, like, less and less behavior. Again, people kind of feel like, well, I can't do anything anymore. And it's like, well, the stuff that you were doing before was kind of crummy. It's just that nobody was calling you out on it, right? So like most of the stuff has been not cool the whole time. It's just no one has been brave enough to say like, hey, that's actually not okay to talk about women's bodies like that. So if you're feeling that, I understand that your whole world is kind of being flipped upside down, and I can appreciate that can feel a little bit disconcerting, but it's probably not ever been cool to begin with. So yeah, being mindful of the language that you use, because again, it probably wasn't cool to begin with, and women are luckily, gladly, excitedly being emboldened to say like, hey, I'm not cool with that. And that's not that is not going to, that pendulum's not going to swing back, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it is only going to get, it's only going to keep moving in this direction where women are feeling comfortable saying like, I don't like this or whatever. So so watching your language, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah. I love do you feel comfortable doing this? And obviously, I don't want to be yelling that out across the gym like, hey, Molly, you feel comfortable doing that hip thrust? I mean, we want to make sure we're discreet about it. But Molly, what's your thoughts on exercise selection in terms of exercise positioning? Like, so for example, I mean, we have a lot of these exercises that, could feel uncomfortable. Any quadruped, any kind of hip thrusting or bridging deadlifts. Right. Do we have to be mindful, or should we let the client be mindful of kind of, don't be doing a deadlift like where, in a certain spot where everybody can see you pushing back, whatever, right?
So this is a great question, and I am so glad you asked, because there's some nuance to it, okay? And I want everybody to listen really carefully. So here's the thing. We don't want to not give our clients those exercises and imply that there's anything inherently shameful about it, right? Yeah. I personally don't mind deadlifting in a crowded gym. It just doesn't bother me. Now, if there's some guy who's walking really close to me while I'm doing it, or there's someone in the gym who's like, I like the way you look when you deadlift, like that might make me a little uncomfortable. But in general, I don't feel uncomfortable. So we don't want to imply that there's anything inherently shameful about those exercises, which is why leaving it up to them is so important. So, it'd be like, hey, so, we're going to deadlift today, especially if they're familiar with deadlifts. Hey, we're going to deadlift today. I can set you up in here on the platform, or we can go in the other room if you're more comfortable with that. What are you good with? Like, it's just so simple, right? It's just so simple. And you can always rely, on your experience. So I was talking to a friend, this is in a slightly different vein, but I was talking to a friend a couple weeks ago, and he's like, hey, I work with women at my office, and there are some women who, if they're going to stay late and working, he's like, they would prefer that I stay there with them. And he's like, but I don't want to act like I'm like protecting them, or I don't want them to feel like I think they can't take care of themselves. What do I do? And I was like, you literally just say, hey, Jessica, I see that you're working late. Some women in the past that I've worked with have been more comfortable if I stay here while they work late, and other ones, are fine with me leaving. What do you prefer? Like, it's just so easy to say, like, in my experience. So you could say, hey, we're deadlifting day. In my experience, some women are cool deadlifting on this platform when it's really busy. Other ones want to go somewhere where it's a little quieter and they can concentrate more. Which one would you prefer? It's just give them the autonomy to decide what they want to do for themselves. Because there's other things that might be going on. You know what I mean? She might be not feeling good in her body that day. She might be, if we really want to get into it, she might be on her period and afraid that, you know what I mean, her butt's going to be sticking out to the, like, you just don't know, right? So it might be different 1 week than it was the last week. So just saying like, hey, we're going to deadlift. I can set you up on this platform, or we can go in there where it's a little quieter and you can concentrate. Which one do you prefer?
Very cool. Easy. Yeah, so easy. Well, Molly,
but it just takes practice, you know?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. Just kind of, you know, you do a couple times, you'll be fine. And, you know, you'll kind of get a good feel for, you know, you have a feel for your own gym anyway. And then, you know, you could even start to think about, hey, maybe I need to redesign some of these little things a little bit, depending on how many women you have, or depending on what the response is to from some of the women. But Molly, thank you so much for doing this. I think, like I said, for any gym owner, male or female, you know, unsure of what to do and how you can help, worried about making a mistake, and afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. Girls Gone Strong has what to do about sexual harassment and assault in the fitness industry. It's a free 5-day course. And there's so much information in this 5-day course, and obviously you can tell by the way Molly just articulated most of this. There's so much stuff to learn. So Molly, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this important topic.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, we worked really hard to make sure that the information in the course is accessible. You know, we're using really plain language and giving lots of examples. And we actually had several guys go through it before we published it, because, you know, I typically I'm often talking about women to women, and I am a woman. So we had a few guys go through the course ahead of time to say like, hey, this really resonates with me, or like, you know, the way that you said this is really helpful, or this helped me think about something in a way that I haven't thought about it before. So yeah, we work to make it really accessible, really easily digestible. There are videos you can watch, or you can download a transcript, or you can download the audio file so you can listen to it on the go. So we tried to make it accessible not only from a language standpoint, but by making it free, and also by giving you all the different formats in which you can consume the information. And honestly, the value of the anti-harassment policy alone is more than worth the enrollment. So yeah, it's super, super valuable. And there's an introduction day, and then there's 5 days, and most of the downloadable resources you'll get in days 2 through 5. So make sure you click on and watch all the days. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at info@girlsgonestrong.com.
Very cool. And we will have links to all that too as well. So Molly, thanks again for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome. I appreciate it.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 243 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Remember, you can try strengthcoach.com now for 3 days. Just $1, you have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com, click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. Special thanks to Chris Pryor and the folks over at Perform Better. Right now, they got the Spend More, Save More sale. The more you spend, the more you save. Remember, if you're opening a gym, they got the best facility design team around. They help you with absolutely everything. Also, a little secret, check the closeouts tab when you go to on the left-hand side of the Perform Better site. There's a lot of hidden gems in there. Check it out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Molly Galbraith for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and sexual harassment in the gym. Thanks to Adam Doughty, Tim Robinson, and Train Heroic. Head over to trainheroic.com. Start your free 14-day trial. Let them know Anthony and the Strength Coach Podcast sent you. You'll save 10% off your first year of Train Heroic Pro or Elite Edition. Alan Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Janet Gourlay and Functional Movement Systems. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. Thanks to MariGold Bars, high quality protein, all the premium ingredients. Go to marigoldbars.com. Use the code StrengthCoach10 to get $10 off your first order. My name's Anthony Rennick. Go to continuefit.com for all my stuff. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.